Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Hughes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I do partly concur with the members of the opposition on this motion. It is a sad day when any company closes down, and especially a company with such a long and proud history of General Motors Holden in Adelaide. But the reality is, Speaker, businesses have to be competitive. No business can continue to be subsidised by other businesses indefinitely, because ultimately someone has to pay that subsidy. So if one business wants to be subsidised, you are putting a higher tax on another business, which makes that business less efficient, deters them from expanding, and deters them from employing people. And the sad reality at the end of the day was that Holden in South Australia was no longer competitive, and that is the reason why the decision to close down was made. And it's not the only company we've seen recently in South Australia close down. Only last week we saw that Coca-Cola were actually closing their operations in South Australia, where they had a glass bottle manufacturing plant, a plant that obviously in glass manufacturing requires tremendous amounts of energy. And it was very understandable that Coca-Cola, with South Australia's high energy costs, pulled out. And of course they joined Pfizer, also pulling out of South Australia the week before. And only a couple of days ago, we had another decision of Caroma pulling out of South Australia. So all of us in this parliament should be very concerned about the exodus of manufacturing from South Australia. And Madam Deputy Speaker, one of the clear reasons for that exodus is the high costs of electricity in that state. And it's not only, Madam Speaker, the businesses that we see closed down, it's also the unseen, the businesses that would have otherwise started up. Our economy relies on people making new investments and new business startups to keep the economy growing. But who is going to invest in a state that has such high electricity costs, such unreliable power? No business today would make that decision. And Madam Deputy Speaker, to give you some idea of the competitive disadvantage faced in South Australia, recently there was a report released by, it was the Australian Energy Market Commission, and they looked at the prices in each state. Now in New South Wales, for the year 2014-15, an average price of electricity for residential, 22 cents per kilowatt hour. But in South Australia, that amount was 30 cents per kilowatt hour. So you almost have a 50% higher price in South Australia than you do in New South Wales. So is it any wonder that we are seeing this exodus of manufacturing from South Australia? But Madam Deputy Speaker, it's not only a competitive disadvantage internally within Australia, it's also a competitive disadvantage with other countries. Now, I was recently had a look at some of the prices in Canada for electricity. Edmonton, the average residential price for electricity is 10.3 Canadian cents. Now, the Canadian dollar and Australian dollar is almost at parity. So you're looking 10.3 cents in Edmonton, but 30 cents in South Australia. 3 times the price. Vancouver, 10.7 cents is their average price for electricity. Calgary, 10.4 cents. And it goes on. And in fact, Montreal in Canada, the average residential price for electricity is 7.23 cents. That is 1/4 of what the cost is in South Australia. We have a crisis in this country with electricity costs. We cannot ignore the problems in South Australia. To double down on a renewable energy target in South Australia that has caused so much damage. So I call on those members in South Australia to realise the crisis that's ahead of you and to call on your party to abandon your 50% renewable energy target, because your state, most of all, cannot afford it.
Thank you.